Well, we had another school shooting. So December 16th in Madison, Wisconsin, there was another tragic incident that occurred in a private school, really small school, in which 2 people died, 6 people injured, and then the suspect committed suicide. As you can tell by my tone, I'm pretty agitated because we continue to not talk about solutions, and these things continue to occur over and over again. I come from the law enforcement community, so I'm getting tired of listening to these chiefs get up in their press conferences and talk about the heroic efforts of these law enforcement officers who arrived on scene and went into the building, right? I guess rather than waiting outside and waiting on everybody to bleed out. But it still doesn't solve anything because they're 8 to 10 minutes late on arriving to actually make an impact on that critical incident. And so we've got to have a paradigm shift and a discussion on actual solutions to this problem, because what we have is a timing issue. When I talk about paradigm shift, we've done this after the 9/11 hijackers took over these planes. Everyone who flies an airline now in our country, if somebody begins a critical incident in an airplane, whoever is capable within sight and sound of that person that looks threatening or is causing a problem, people intervene immediately because we know how quickly that can happen. We're not waiting on the plane to land. We're not waiting to see if a U.S. Marshal happens to be on board. People who are capable that within sight and sound of that critical incident on that plane are intervening. And so that paradigm shift is what needs to take place in our businesses, in our schools, and our churches in order to save lives in an active shooter. What I'm talking today about is the response piece of this. There is a prevention piece that needs to be talked about too, through identifying these folks who are falling through the cracks early and doing threat assessments and interventions early. But that's not the point of this video. We're going to really kind of break down this incident and what I think is the solution of how we can prevent loss of life when this thing pops off, right? So just going through the timeline real quickly. Again, this suspect was a student in the school, which is very typical, 15-year-old female, pretty rare. But she opened fire at mid-morning, almost lunchtime, in her classroom, killing a teacher, another student, and injuring 6 others before she took her life with the gun she was using. The first 911 call came in at 10:57 a.m. This was from a 2nd grade student who placed that call. So I assume maybe 2nd graders do have phones, or it could have come from a teacher, but either way, it was 10:57. They haven't released the timelines from the video of when the shooting actually began, but on average, they're about 3 to 4 minutes during a critical incident before the first 911 call comes out. I'm assuming since a 2nd grader placed that call, that's probably true. You have to orient yourself to, is this a shooting? Do I immediately protect myself and then eventually get to where you can get to a phone and call 911? That usually is going to take 3 to 4 minutes. So whenever that timeline comes out, I'm assuming it's going to be between 10:51 and 10:53 when the shooting actually began happening. So if we're following along, so 10:57, police are notified. At 11 o'clock, the first officer arrives, which is a fast response time. But if you look at that, that's 7 to 9 minutes that this person has had unfettered amount of time to shoot as many people as they want. And that's what we often find, is that these shooters are tired of shooting people, or they've given up on the will to do so, and they're just executing the next section of their plan, right? So either they're waiting on police to kill them, they are escaping, which is the latest trend, or they kill themselves. But in very rare circumstances are police actually intervening to cut down the loss of life early on in the way that we could be doing this, right? Because the time gap is so big. And I think coming from that community, I know that we're the best trained we have been to intervene and to do good things, but we're looking at the solution from a wrong angle. We're 100% relying on law enforcement to neutralize this threat and not accounting for that 8 to 9 minute time gap where this person has zero time to really think about anything else other than carrying out their mission of killing as many people as they would like. So The solution that we need to consider is identifying capable people to be within sight and sound of the critical incident. So in a school setting, having an armed teacher or an armed staff member on each corridor that within sight and sound, when this thing happens, we have a reaction. We have a response team, a person that can go and intervene and interdict and neutralize a threat immediately. Because if you look at the time, amount of time that these people have, you can count on them killing about one person every 10 seconds. So we can reduce that by having people that are capable to be able to respond. I hear some pushback from people, either from the education community, a lot from the law enforcement community, that you can't find qualified people to engage in that way, to protect people. Teachers don't want to do that. I give some pushback on that. It's not for everybody. I'm not saying that it is for everybody, but I do think that if you can identify people that have that desire, probably already carry outside of school, and identifying and vetting and giving some training to those folks, we can get there. So many shootings, you see a teacher in which she has her back to the shooter and has students in her arms because she is shielding people. That's a protector. That's a lioness. She's just not been given the tool to be able to actually protect those students in that environment in which she's in, when she's protecting herself against somebody with a firearm. And so they are there. That's a person with that mentality. She just has to be given the right tool for the job. The other pushback I would say to that is that I've been working with churches, putting REACT teams in churches for the last 6 years, and done a good job of locating, identifying, vetting, and training folks in that community who we know church people love on people. They don't want to hurt people. So if I can locate and identify people within the church community, we surely can find people in businesses, schools, to be able to be a response team, right? To be able to easily identify, hey, this is a shooter, this is somebody that needs to be neutralized, and then engage that person effectively, right? So that's what we need to get to. That's the response that churches, schools, businesses, we've got to consider that. And again, this is one piece of the puzzle. This is the reaction piece. This is the first part that we put up in order to reduce loss of life. The prevention side of identifying these people early, doing threat assessments, interventions early, and a myriad of other aspects to identifying, hey, how can we prevent it? That's all good things too. But if you don't have an actual response in place, then you are going to be waiting 9, 10, 15 minutes before your response gets there. And by that time, it's over, right? The shooter has either given up, waiting to die, or has already gotten away. So that's what we see over and over again. We need to start talking about the right things, though. Praying for these victims and praying that we can really start having real conversations about resolving the situation in our country.